Fantasy is not often talked about with open hands and outstretched arms. When someone brings up the idea of sexual fantasy or erotic imagination, it's a topic a lot of people kind of back away from and are like, I'm going to just sit this one out. And I've been there, but I'm always willing to divulge if it means I get to hear other people's stories. And so I feel that it's important that we find a comfort level with at least sharing that kind of information with our partners. And there's just something I wanted to read and just ask you to marinate and then get back to me with some feedback and let me know what your thoughts are on it. So this is taken from Esther Perel's book called Mating in Captivity. And she writes, "The erotic imagination is fueled by a host of feelings that are far from proper: aggression, raw lust, infantile neediness, power, revenge, selfishness, and jealousy. These feelings, which are all permanent residents of our intimate relations, can threaten the stability of our connection and make love miserable. But the rules of propriety are turned on their heads and often invited in for the sole purpose of being trampled." Okay, and so what she then writes to is the idea that she uses as an example the recovering rape victim that wants to be taken again in her sexual fantasy, or the feminist who wants to be dominated by a patriarchal man. And the idea is that in a lot of ways, our fantasies can help heal our traumas. And in a lot of other ways, what we want to act out in our fantasy, in our mind, in a safe space that we don't have to share with anyone, is all of these feelings, these feelings of aggression and lust and neediness and power and revenge and jealousy. While we're able to act them out in our mind, it can help us heal from the trauma and from the markings and the scars and the pains of the past. It can help us work through some of our childhood traumas, whether it just be simple things like experiencing an inability to be a resilient person after you witnessed your parents go through a divorce or anything. In a fantasy, we act out what we dare not do in reality. Fantasy can help us unwind and de-stress and let go and put ourselves in another realm. And there's always a precautionary, obviously. We don't want to live in fantasy land because we have to live in reality too. But we can integrate the two. And when you come to accepting that for yourself, accepting an erotic imagination and not seeing it as something that's negative, you are going to feel transformed. And through that transformation, you can work your way towards finding a comfort in sharing your fantasies with your partner. And that's something that took me a long time to do with my husband. I always had fantasies playing. And a lot of times while the fantasy was playing, I was yelling at myself too, because I've always, we always hear that having these weird sexual fantasies are wrong and are and just another form of infidelity. And that's not always the case. Sometimes we just need to create a new experience for ourselves that's curious and that's different. And men and women do it all the time anyway. I mean, when a woman imagines what a wonderful evening would be like, her birthday, her anniversary, her wedding night, she's fantasizing. And unless we verbalize those fantasies, unless we speak our desires out loud, they stay in our head and they never come into fruition. And so my question to you is, what is it that keeps you from embracing your erotic imagination and sharing your fantasies with your partner? And what more do you need? What kind of information? What kind of transformation do you have to go through in order to come to this kind of comfort level? And if you don't want to, or you don't think we should, let me know why.